Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to let you know upfront that this episode has been made in partnership with Mailchimp, which means it's a sponsored episode and I've been paid to produce this conversation. I want to be transparent about that because the whole point of this podcast is to give you genuinely useful information you can actually act on. I only partner with brands where I believe there's something really valuable for independent retailers and small businesses, and as you'll hear today, that's absolutely the case here. All of the views and reflections you hear from me are my own. Right, let's get into it. It's a really great in-depth conversation. If you run a retail business or an e-commerce brand, chances are you already have some form of email marketing set up. You're sending newsletters, maybe the odd promotional email, and it's doing something, but probably not as much as it could be. Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan. I'm Catherine Erdly, and in the next few minutes, you're about to get powerful real-world retail strategies from insights shared both from my guests and myself, backed up by my 25 years in the retail industry. Keep listening to learn how to grow a thriving, profitable product business. Let's jump in with this latest episode. Here's what I see again and again when I talk to independent retailers. They're sitting on a gold mine of customer data and not using it. They're sending the same message to everyone on their list, regardless of what those people have bought, when they last bought, or what they're actually interested in. And as a result, they're working harder than they need to, spending more than they should on customer acquisition and leaving a huge amount of repeat revenue on the table. Today, I'm sitting down with Ali Wood from Mailchimp to get practical about how small retail businesses can get more from their email and SMS marketing, using the data that they already have. There are some genuinely eye-opening numbers in this conversation and some really interesting ways of looking at things that you might not have thought of before. Thank you so much for joining me, Ali. I can't wait to jump in, and I'd love to jump straight into the weeds.
Yeah.
If you look at some small business retailers or e-commerce brands right now, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are that they're facing when it comes to marketing and actually driving profitable growth?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to jump into. I think for a lot of the customers that we speak to and the brands that we see, it's about measuring and optimizing customer acquisition. I think there's so many different channels at the moment and different places that you can keep your data, track your data. And if it's not, it's just fragmented, right? So if you haven't got everything talking to each other, it's really difficult to then kind of figure out like where your key ROI is and where you should be investing your money. Interestingly, one of the things that we've seen is that, brands really want to invest in being able to grow their lists. And they know that they need to now start capturing more information. So like phone numbers, for example, for like messaging. Yeah. But actually customers are getting a lot more protective over where they want to, where they want to put their data and who they want to give it to. So it's kind of a bit like, it's competing, right? So how do you kind of like cut through the noise and get your message heard?
I guess it's one of those things, isn't it? When cost of acquisition is low and it's easy to get customers, and in a way, not that you can be more, you don't have to be as focused, but the more expensive it gets, the more you have to get it right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about it, you're investing in channels, you've got channels to invest in, which is great, but then how do you know what channel is driving what? And I'm thinking like really good example would be like, if you're doing some sort of like targeting and you get someone that you have a niche product and they're really interested in that product, you send them some great email content, I don't know, say like ski wear, and then they go to your website, they look at the ski wear, but then you get a pop-up that says 10% off and then they click on that. Then how do you now know that they are interested in the ski wear, but they've clicked on your 10% pop-up? So, there's lots of kind of like conflicting ways in which the data, if you've not got it under some sort of like unified platform, and if you're not tagging it correctly, you don't have the right understanding of the customer.
What Ali's describing there is something I see constantly with retailers I work with. Data coming in from multiple places, none of it talking to each other, and founders making big decisions about their marketing spend almost completely blind. That fragmentation problem was exactly what drove Mailchimp to rethink their platform. And what they built in response is really interesting because it wasn't just about giving teams more data to look at.
I think for us, a lot of it is around, progressing from being a very sort of like basic email tool to something that is like much more automated and something that's going to give you the data insights that you need. Because what we kept hearing time and time again is I'm really frustrated. I have a small team. They're stretched thin. I don't really have necessarily the bandwidth to manage all of the processes that I need to manage. And then when you put data into that as well, there's a huge amount of data. So I'm collecting all
Yeah.
of this data, but how do I put it together? And I need a tool that's going to be able to kind of give me some real insights, but then also make it really easy for me to use that with a very lean team. So one of the things as well was, so you've got your data coming in, you've got the actual process of email marketing and messaging that you need to do, but then you've also got the ROI piece hanging over the top of it. So, if I've got a small team, am I making the right investments? How do I know that this investment has driven success for me? And I think one of the things that's really easy to get hung up on is, what did this specific email drive for me? Or what did this specific social media campaign drive? Whereas it's kind of now, because you've got all of these different avenues, you need to look at it as a more kind of holistic approach and say, what did that strategy do for me? How many new users did that strategy drive me? Or how much engagement did I get from existing customers through that strategy? Because everything's so kind of tightly linked. And it's really hard to build a picture of that if you haven't actually got a platform that's got all of that data linked to it. So we expanded our e-commerce capability. So we've got about 26% more triggers. And so that basically that means then that what businesses can do is automate more intelligently using the data that they have. And one of the big things that I like around that is kind of looking at two things. You're looking at customer lifetime value, which is hugely important. But then you're also looking at what's the propensity of this subset of customers that could be spending more with me, are more likely to buy at a specific time. And so the platform and the AI is giving you that data, and then it's automating that process so you can kind of focus more on the creativity around it and the message that you want to send to people. So yeah, it's super exciting. But ultimately what we're trying to do is just get teams to run faster, get the AI to review the data that you've got and say, yes, no, this is where it could be tweaked, maybe do some A/B testing as well. And I think when you're looking at things like, driving in loyalty examples into your email marketing strategy, they kind of go hand in hand, really. You've got your loyalty data, you've got your email data, you've got data coming from your e-commerce platform as well. So ultimately what we want to do is increase the ROI.
This last point is really important, and I want to make sure it sinks in. The goal of better data isn't more reports to read on a Friday afternoon. It's faster, smarter decisions with less manual effort. The businesses I see growing right now aren't the ones necessarily with the biggest teams. They're the ones who found ways to make every pound of marketing spend work harder. What Ali is describing, using AI to identify which customers are most likely to buy again and automating the right message to them at the right time, is exactly how you do that without needing to hire a marketing department.
I'm really surprised at how many customers still just send the same email to the same person, to a group of people rather.
Yes.
So, and I think that, is kind of really taking it back to what's the basics that I can do in order to understand my customer base? And then what's the message that they need in the journey that they are in at the moment. If I'm a customer that bought from you last year and I've not bought anything in the last 12 months, then you need to win me back. Something's happened. You're going to send me a very different message to someone that bought from you last week, right? So, the customers that bought last week, you want to really engage with them. You want to get positive sentiment coming from that purchase. So you might want to get them to make a review of the purchase that they've done, which is why you need the review data linked in. If someone's done a review and maybe it's not as positive as you thought it was going to be, okay, I need that data. And then I can use the tools to automate responses and get them into the right segments, positive reviewers, negative reviewers. What's the story that I want to do? And this is where AI becomes really fascinating, because you can just set up those kind of sequences, but you can think about what do you need to do in order for you to engage all of the different types of customers that you've got in your database. One of the examples that I've used a few times, but I'll say it to you, it's especially when you're looking at kind of bringing in SMS, and I know we'll get onto that in a minute, but do you 100% know who your customer is shopping for? My friend was shopping for her son for Christmas, and then she gave her phone number, so she was enrolled into SMS, but the content of the SMS, the tone of it was geared towards a 14-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
you're trying to integrate it, but she kind of got that message and it didn't land well. The tone wasn't right. And so, again, that's like, it's a really interesting way that you can say, right, use pop-ups and things like that. So, who are you shopping for? Is this a gift? Subtle things in order for you to be able to start building up better pictures of people, like without making kind of assumptions, I think is really important. It's easier said than done. But with a lot of these tools now that have, things integrated, you can then start making tags and putting those on them and then giving them the right story.
The segmentation point that Ali just made is one of the most important shifts any retailer can make in how they think about email. Stop treating your list as one group. Start thinking about each person and where they actually are in their relationship with you. Someone who bought from you last week needs a completely different conversation to someone who hasn't opened an email in 6 months. Once you start designing for those different journeys, your email stops feeling like broadcasting and starts feeling like a relationship. And that changes everything about how it performs. And don't forget, even 2 or 3 years ago, this would have been incredibly difficult for you to do. But now with automation and AI built into email marketing platforms, there's a real opportunity for small businesses to do more.
Imagine how more effective that message could have been if they'd have collected more data. Are you shopping for someone's birthday? Is it their birthday? Looking around, okay, I can start looking at the fact that they bought something in May. Maybe their birthday's in May. Have you got any birthdays coming up? Here's some special offers. It's just being able to kind of think about that next level down in the data that you're trying to gather. And there's some really creative ways you can do it now through quizzes and pop-ups and you can do that through the journey. You've got email that's there to build your story and tell people about your brand and keep them connected, longer messages. And then you've got messaging, cuts through the noise. You've got your transactional, you can link it in now to sort of, like the operational side of things. So your order's on its way, thanks for booking, your transactional sort of stuff. But then also kind of cutting through the noise. We've got, we've got a new drop coming, check your email in a week's time. There's different mediums kind of coming through. But I think it's ultimately like if you've spent the money trying to gain a customer and you've acquired a customer and they've bought from you and they like what they've bought, you need to turn that data into sales. So this is really around where you do have to spend some time on looking at your data and the insights that you gather there and helping that to inform what you want to do in your email marketing strategy. In simple terms, it's kind of like having all of your data in one place, isn't it? So it's about not having to go to each of your separate tools. So the more that you can kind of pull data from individual tools into one place so you can start to build up that picture of someone, then you can start making better informed decisions and get yourself kind of better insights. I think for e-commerce, obviously, there's a lot of data in your e-com platform. So how can you pull that into your email marketing tools and start to build up a picture of who you've got in your database? And also it's around how can you start to spot for example, your highest value customers, really kind of basic segmentation. So I've got all of these customers. Okay, but what have they done? I've got high value buyers. I've got regular buyers, but they buy lots of little things. So I know I could increase their average order value. How do I do that? Then I've got customers that, haven't bought from me, like we mentioned earlier. So then what's kind of my re-engagement strategy versus what's my engagement strategy? And then I think the unified piece kind of then also really brings in email and SMS and messaging. And I think before they've been pretty siloed in the sense that maybe SMS is used to say thanks for your order's on your way, your transactional stuff. But now actually, if you bring it into your strategy, like I mentioned earlier, if you really want a group of customers to read a specific email that you've created because it's really important and you really want to tell them something about your brand, they're going to get, I don't know, there's quadruple the amount of emails that you get versus text messages, right? So if you can bring SMS into your strategy to let them know that email's coming so that they look out for it. because what we do know is that SMS is obviously going to get into someone's brain much quicker than an email and a list. But using the two together, you can start building out that strategy.
Running an e-commerce business? Then you know the struggle. Not enough time, too many tools, and no clear picture of what's actually driving sales. For retailers today, customer acquisition and growth are becoming harder to properly measure and optimize. That's why I'm interested in what Intuit Mailchimp has just launched. Built to deliver ROI for e-commerce brands, their new advanced, data-driven capabilities combine unified data with powerful automation across email and messaging. Now, you can pull your Shopify data, site activity, and even customer reviews from platforms like Yotpo and JudgeMe into one place, so you can target high-value buyers, re-engage at-risk customers, and automate smarter. Want to connect the dots between campaigns and revenue? Expanded SMS across Europe, instant opt-ins, and unique discount codes help you reach customers globally and track exactly which messages drive orders. Plus, a new omnichannel dashboard shows what's working across email, SMS, and automations, so you can optimize with confidence. And with AI built in, you can turn insights into ready-to-launch campaigns in minutes. Retailers using Mailchimp are seeing up to 30 times return on investment, and some Shopify connected stores are generating around £32 for every £1 spent. Less guesswork, more growth. Visit www.resilientretailclub.com/Mailchimp to learn more. Kind of going back to this idea of the unified data. So one of the pain points that I see is you've touched on it already. It's this idea of, right, I'm doing all of these things. I'm sending emails, I'm sending SMS. I am also on socials. Maybe I'm doing organic social. Maybe I'm doing UGC. Maybe I'm doing paid ads, working with content creators.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got bricks and mortar stores. So there's kind of like a huge number of different things that they're doing. So I guess it's then kind of working out, how do they actually work out which bits were working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And also where it's not. So where are people dropping off? If you have separate providers for this stuff, then you're looking at separate reports. Whereas if you bring it all into one provider, then you can start seeing what the actual plan was. So it's kind of going back to my original point, which was it's not necessarily like how successful was that one SMS or that one email, but how did it work together as a strategy to drive views on pages, click-throughs, and ultimately purchases. So I think it is really about trying to have that overall vision of what you want the customer to go through, and then being able to use the AI that you have within the tools to start pulling out the insights so that you can see a spike when that SMS, or we planned that SMS and then actually we wanted an open rate of 40% on that email and we've got an open rate of 42. Or A/B testing where it's like, okay, well, the next one, let's not send the SMS and just send the email and see what our open rate is. So starting to use the insights from the tools themselves to then make decisions on whether it's worked. You have to kind of like pinpoint, I think, though, what does success look like? Because otherwise you're going to get into this like too much data. I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
It's kind of very much sort of like take these things segment by segment and kind of like drive what you're looking for.
What Ali's talking about here is a tactical shift that unlocks everything else. Pick one goal, build a strategy around it, and measure the whole thing, not just the individual emails. So that might look like, my goal this month is to convert new subscribers into buyers within 30 days. I build a welcome sequence, set my triggers, and then I measure whether that strategy achieved its goal, not whether any single email got a decent open rate. That's a completely different way of thinking about email marketing than what most small retailers are currently doing. And it's the shift that makes all of the data actually useful.
Also, you can look at things like some people prefer email, some people prefer messages. So which one for which particular segment is working for you? And last year we did some research, which was like a holiday guide. And I thought that was super interesting because one of the things you need to be thinking about now is everything that you're doing now, and I hate to mention Christmas, but
Hey, I'm never too early to talk about Christmas.
It's never too early to talk about it. If you're not engaging with your customers through your email marketing strategy now, then what's to say that they're going to open your email when you need them to, when you are really in the thick of it, trying to drive that traffic that you need at Christmas, for example? So there has to be some thought process around that. and then starting to see the engagement rates. And then if you're starting to get engagement rates through certain types of emails, and then starting to test SMS within that as well. So as you lead up, I don't know, we've got a bank holiday offer, there's Easter offers, or, whatever that could be, then you can start logging in. I like one of the things that we like is that, people that like discounts. Are there people that only ever open up your emails if they're mentioning discounts or your SMSs? Right. Here's 5% off. Oh, I've clicked on that SMS. Okay, so you know that they're driven by price. What have they then done on your website that you can then pull that data from your ecom platform and then start putting that into your email marketing? Because it might be, I know that they're interested in a discount, but actually I've not shown them the right product that they're interested in, for example. So it's all these kind of like minutiae. And let's not forget that, with the cost of obtaining emails and the cost of every other type of marketing to drive new contacts into your base, once you've got them there, you can send as many emails as you want. Like, this is, you're free to reign. So, go through that data and test things out and build out those relationships.
We've touched on SMS a few times, but I'd love to dig into it in a little bit more detail because it has really evolved over the last few years.
Yeah.
So how do you see it fitting alongside email? Like, what's the kind of best practice, or what's working for e-commerce brands right now in terms of the combination?
Yeah, I think it's definitely around it not being just a standalone solution. It's definitely something that needs to be worked into your overall marketing strategy. And one of the things that we're seeing a lot of now is around kind of like instant SMS opt-ins. So I think what we've been seeing is people have been collecting emails and collecting phone numbers, but not necessarily collecting the same thing from one person. And so we kind of now got email list and SMS lists. So we kind of need to bring all of that together into unified data. So being able to kind of like use pop-ups to start getting phone numbers and then linking that back to your contacts. One of the things I like is it's becoming a lot more operationalized. So you can link it through data. You can link it to the customer journey. Thank you for your order. Or we noticed, I had a really great one recently where a brand had said, I know you've looked at this product a lot. And sure you don't want to buy it, and sent me the link and, a nice picture of whatever I was looking at the time. But what it means is that now, because before it was very sort of, operational of the transactional side of things, but now actually it's in the marketing team's hands and they can get the right tone and keep the same tone as the email marketing strategy. Because I don't think there's anything worse than sort of like your text message just looking like it's from someone you've never known, whereas the email's really curated. So that's really nice that it can start to kind of become one and feel like the same. If someone gives a brand or a company their phone number, that is they're explicitly saying to you, I want to hear from you.
That's a concept that it's worth really pausing and thinking about for a minute. When someone hands over their phone number, they're extending a level of trust that is qualitatively different from giving you their email address. The bar for how you use it is higher, and as you're about to hear, so are the returns when you get it right.
So I think being sort of like creative around what the topic that you can use to do re-engagement, and like to put that into perspective. So like, what does a 28% click-through rate mean? Well, for that particular business, it was like 8,000 new MRR. So
wow.
a huge amount. And I think what we're seeing as well around sort of like on the performance side with SMS, it's kind of delivering about sort of like 22 times ROI. When you're using SMS with Mailchimp, and actually even then when you bring kind of like Shopify into that, we're seeing sort of returns around 41 times the actual initial investment. So huge numbers. So I think if anyone is thinking about it, you should definitely give it a go and use tools that have got A/B testing to start like plan and help you just, start small. You'll see really good numbers and then you can kind of grow with the tools as you get more comfortable using them.
And kind of think about those use cases, right? Think about those segments who you could start with. Who are the low-hanging fruit? Maybe, like you say, the people who were good customers you haven't bought for a while or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Who are your most loyal, your most engaged? Do you have their phone numbers? If not, use your email marketing strategy to drive that engagement and get that data. Think about what you then want to offer them for giving you that data. It's kind of like, it's always like a give to get. You give me your phone number, what am I going to give you? This is and I always think as well, like, even if you're taking it back to the bones of you're sitting there thinking, oh, I've got a massive database, but I've got a really small engagement rate. Okay, well, maybe you need some new people. So what can you give that? So I think the wine guide's a really good example, or, if you are, booking hotel rooms, like explain what your local area guides. I don't know what. Think about the value exchange for someone giving you the personal information and how then you can make that email be seen within the inbox or the SMS. I mean, the SMS is pretty much seen. The stats there prove that. But I think with email, again, this is where you can use AI within email, which is going to start doing, helping you improve like a lot of the content. But then the marketing team can start adding on top of that around tone, imagery, and even like sort of like we integrate into Canva, so like all your imagery can just really be sort of like edited over into emails as well. So it's kind of a little bit too easy at the moment.
Well, then it's got to be about the quality of the message, right?
Exactly.
What's coming next for small business marketing? Obviously, so many changes at the moment, but how do you think it will change over the next few years? Where do you think it's going?
I mean, you can't not say AI, can you, in answer to this question, really?
Yeah.
Lean teams can use AI to think about like the functional side of things. But to your point that you just mentioned, it's like, how do you then use the human assistance to lay over that to make sure that you've got the brand tone, that your strategy that you're considering is relevant, and the journey that you want to take your customers on. I think for me, the journey, even as a consumer, if I think about that, I think that's really valuable and really potent. So if I engage with a brand and I'm not sure, I've never shopped with them before, but then they build my confidence, this is how easy it is to return. This is why this is why our business is here. These are our values, and you start getting engaged with that. You can automate those journeys that I'm going to go through, and you can concentrate, the humans can concentrate on the messaging so that the messaging is really like interactive for me. So I think it's a lot around that. And I think, again, like we have to kind of like circle back to, how do you unify the data? The data is only going to grow. So how do you make sure that you've got the right tools to be able to analyze? And also like to be able to, we do say to quite a few of our customers around cleansing data quite regularly. So I think actually we've gone through, we need to collect all the data, but actually doing a nice cleanse and then seeing where you're at and looking at some of the gaps that you want to fill, or potentially outline those ones that have, you think that you can re-engage, is much more successful than just blasting everyone.
Looking at who you've got on your lists and making sure that they still exist, number one, because don't a certain number of email addresses just become obsolete each year because people change, and also that they're still interested and that you're only sending to the people who have the potential to be engaged, really.
Yeah, I think so. If you look at it, so it's sort of like bringing your data together and making sure that it's clean data, automating as much as you can through the AI tools, and then reviewing with your analytics and, keeping that circle going. And then you've got like your amazing humans that work within your business to get your tone and your brands.
So here's what I'm taking away from this conversation. The retailers who are going to win over the next few years aren't the ones with the biggest budgets or the biggest teams. They're the ones who are the smartest about the data that they already have. Clean your data, connect it across your platforms, use it to understand what different groups of customers need from you, and then automate the right message to the right person at the right time. If you're not yet using SMS alongside email, the numbers Ali shared today are worth taking seriously. 22 times return on investment on SMS alone, and 41 times when you bring your Shopify data into the mix. Those aren't vanity metrics, those are the kind of numbers that can fundamentally change the economics of a small retail business. If this has got you thinking about your own strategy, come and find me over on Instagram at Resilient Retail Club and drop me a message. I'd love to hear what you're going to try first. And if you're feeling overwhelmed and now your to-do list is even bigger, don't forget you can start small. You can start with one small step. You don't have to do everything all at once. You can also head over to resilientretailclub.com/Mailchimp to find out all about the Mailchimp platform. See you next week.